Alright, so hey guys, welcome to another video, and today I want to talk a little bit about my slave driver Necromancer that I've been playing in solo Cellphone Harvest. Now, I know a lot of you probably have the same question, and that question is, why slave drivers though? Have you not seen Redemption Sentries? And I have seen Redemption Sentries, I've played with Redemption Sentries, even things like Scintille Syntites. I've actually tried a bunch of different specters this league, but I still prefer to run slave drivers, because the thing is, a lot of normal specters, the ranged ones, whether it be attack or spell based, tend to stop and start firing when they see something. That's not the case with slave drivers, because they're a melee spectre, they just happen to have lightning surge. This leads to the slave drivers being far more aggressive and also at them being far better at seeking out targets, because they need to get within melee range to do their thing. So instead of just standing there, casting or attacking their tits off, they will constantly pace back and forth and run around very aggressively looking for things to hit. I like to describe them as a strong independent spectre that don't need no Necromancer, because if you don't provide anything for them to slap on the screen, they are more than happy to run off screen to slap things there instead. And finally, and this is probably my favorite thing about slave drivers, is not only are they very aggressive, they are very attentive as well, and their response time is almost instantaneous. They don't have to wind anything up, they don't think about anything, they see an enemy, they slap it. It's not all nice and rosy though. Slave drivers have pretty low life, so if you want them to survive endgame stuff, you have to put them in a helmet where you can actually give them minion life without losing any more important links. And their damage scaling potential is also not as high as it is on something like Redemption Sentries, but with a little bit of investment you can easily get a slave driver to do about 1 million DPS, and once you have 5 of them, well, you have all the damage you need. Because 5 million DPS on a build that's as safe as this is more than enough to complete everything. So, Mech BODYSNATCHER over here. Let's start off with the wand. I'm personally running a +2 wand with a trigger, but I can easily get away with a +1 wand or even no extra levels on the wand at all, because we're running the specters in the helmet so we can get the extra levels there instead. And for the trigger, I'm running Desecrate as well as Bone Offering with 1 empty slot, because I couldn't really think of anything too substantial to put in there that I would want to trigger all the time. And with Bone Offering, we're gonna be near block cap all the time thanks to glancing blows, and we're gonna have some nice recovery of life when we block as well. This is also really nice to have for the slave drivers in terms of defense, as well as your animate guardian, because as I've said already, slave drivers are somewhat squishier. Then for the gloves, we just have life, chaos resistance, and some crafted lightning resistance, and here we have stone golem with feeding frenzy to feed the feeding frenzy to our specters, and then I have convocation as well as portal. For the belt, I have a pretty generic belt with just a bunch of life, a ton of res, and then some armor and evasion, boots, life, armor, strength, chaos resistance, movement speed, and some crafted res. And here we have our aura setup, so we have generosity linked to zealotry, level 1 precision, and wrath. Then I have a pretty mediocre vermilion ring with some life, resistances, and a little bit of dex. Then we have a pretty good double influence shield with Crusader and Redeemer, and here we have 2 minimum frenzy and power charges, as well as gain 13% of lightning damage as extra chaos, and then some crafted flat damage. Now we use this shield with necromantic ages so that all our minions have 2 frenzy and power charges all the time, and our slave drivers, which do primarily lightning damage, also gain a percentage of that as extra chaos. Now this isn't that complicated to make, you basically just awaken or orb the 2 charges together, but if you don't want to go through the process of making it, you can just run Victario's Charity instead. Next on the menu, we have the Jinxed Juju, which is just an awesome amulet. It gives you mini fortify because it redirects 10% of the damage you take to your specters, then it scales up your auras, of which we have 3, scales up our curse, which we also have on a ring, then it gives us chaos resistance, and we used oils to anoint Gravepact as well. Up next, we have the body armor, which comes from Delve with +1 maximum number of specters, and then we crafted it with life, chaos resistance, and % maximum life. And here I have animate guardian linked with minion life, elemental army, and meat shield. I also have flame dash in there, and for the time being I just have blind. I don't really know what else to link to him, because he used to have Calling Strike, but now he has a Kingmaker, so that doesn't make sense anymore. So for now it's just that. Then we have a Crusader ring with conductivity, a bunch of res, and some life, and finally the helmet. Now, I decided to go for a pure Elder Helmet with, at the moment, +2 level of socketed minion gems, level 20 immolate, level 18 minion life, and level 18 minion damage, and then some intelligence and lightning res. Now, I don't have minion life on there just because I happen to roll it. It's there deliberately because, as I said in the beginning, slave drivers have fairly low life, so the minion life helps them survive and actually makes them viable in some of the more dangerous endgame encounters. Because without the minion life, some endgame stuff like Cortex, Alhazmin, some Delving, and even Cyrus Spectres are a bit of a no-go for slave drivers because they would die. And this helmet, believe it or not, isn't actually that difficult to get. It takes about 25 to 30 bound fossils to hit all of these things. So in here, we're of course gonna slot our race Spectre, which I have at level 21. So all in all, the Spectres are level 27, which gives us level 85 slave drivers with a bunch more life and a bunch more damage. Now, the levels don't make as big of a difference as they do on something like zombies or golems or even Herald of Agony, but they does give the Spectres more life and more damage. And we're gonna link the Spectres, the slave drivers in this case, with Control Destruction, Deathmark, as well as Spell Echo, and then of course they have the Immolate, minion life and minion damage, as well as the +2 levels from the helmet, so that's essentially like them being linked to a level 3 Empower as well. Now, one thing about this though is that in order for the Immolate to work, the enemy has to be ignited, so you have to be scaling at least a little bit of crit with your Spectres, and they have to be doing some fire damage so they ignite on crit, or you will have to ignite the enemy yourself. It's also why we use Freezing Pulse to trigger Elemental Equilibrium, which is not something you see every day, and it's simply to increase the enemy's cold resistance but lower their lightning and fire resistance, so they take advantage of the Immolate even more. Now, my tree is probably a little bit different to what you normally see. I can't be too cluster heavy because I'm in SSF, so I have to work with what I have. So we start off by going through the Intelligence up to Lord of the Dead, and then we put a medium Thread of Hope above a Witch, and this will allow us to easily hit Ravenous Horde, Heart and Soul, and Cruel Preparation for a ton of damage and life. This is a pretty cool use of a Thread of Hope, I think. Then we head up here and slap in a large cluster jewel with minion damage, of course, and we want to roll it with Renewal, ideally. This gives your minions some regen, and also gives them a 10% chance to deal double damage when they're on full life, which isn't ideal if you're running the Jinxed Juju, because they're going to be taking little bits of damage as you take damage, but it's still really good. If you're not taking damage, it's basically 10% more damage for them. Then we're gonna put in Vicious Bite for the crit chance and crit multi. This allows your Spectres to actually crit reliably, and we're gonna top it off with Feasting Fiends for the life, damage, and leech. We're of course going to pick up Death Attunement, which is what allows us to go up to 5 Spectres once we get the Spectre Gem up to level 25 and we get our Delve chest piece. And then you also want to pick up Fearsome Force, because the Lightning Surge the Spectres do, the slave drivers that is an AoE spell, so this just gives them a bigger Lightning Surge and improves their clear. Then, even though we're not using a shield, we're gonna pick up Glancing Blows, and what this does is it basically doubles the block we get from Bone Offering. And of course we pick up all the life, minion damage, and a little bit of reservation reduction as well on the left side of the tree. Then we're gonna slap in an Anatomical Knowledge there. This is pretty much the only area where Anatomical Knowledge is good. It gives you % life and then maximum life per allocated intelligence, and we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 90, so we get 8% maximum life as well as 30 flat life, and that's really good for a single jewel. You can of course replace this with a different jewel, but it's just, a solid jewel there. Then we pick up Elemental Equilibrium, so as we use Freezing Pulse and we hit the enemies with cold, their lightning and fire resistance are lowered. The reason you pick this up, by the way, is because Elemental Equilibrium doesn't work for minions. You are the only one as the Necromancer, or whatever class you are, that can trigger this. So you hit the enemy once and then your minions can just hit them with whatever and they will never change the equilibrium on them. And then of course we pick up Necromantic Aegis, which on this setup with the shield I currently have pretty much doubles the damage my minions do, because it takes your shield and gives the benefits of the shield to your minions instead. And finally we have the Ascendancy, so we're a Necromancer of course, and we're gonna start with Mindless Aggression for just a whole load of goodness, Unnatural Strength for the +2 level of all minion skill gems. This is incredibly strong, even though it's kind of boring. Then we have Commander of Darkness for the aura bonuses, and finally Mistress of Sacrifice so that we can apply Bone Offering to ourselves as well, even though it's at a reduced effect. Now, if you want to run zombies on this setup as well, which you very much can, you can even 6-link them in the chest piece, you would drop Commander of Darkness and then instead pick up Bone Barrier, which gives you Bone Armor, which is far better than Steel Skin, which is what I'm currently running on my left click, but it also, thanks to all the zombies that are going to be running around, allows you to cap the additional physical damage reduction as well as the recovery rate. Now, the one last thing we can talk about in terms of putting the build together, I suppose, is the Animate Guardian. My Animate Guardian is super duper spicy. He has a Garb of the Ephemeral, which is a Cortex drop, and then a Kingmaker, which is a very rare weapon indeed. Then I also gave him a Crown of the Inward Eye, Southbound for the gloves, and then Victario's Flight for the boots. But you absolutely do not need to give your animate guardian these kinds of items, because if the guardian were to die, it would be a very, very sad day indeed. So what you can do instead is give him Dying Breath for the weapon, for like the aura stuff there. You can give him Leer Cast for the damage. You can give him Victorious Flight for the move speed on the boots, Southbound for the gloves for the more life on the guardian, and then some random chest piece, something like Belly of the Beast works great because it just gives him % life. Now this is by far the best character that I've put together so far. It's not the most defensive, the Guardian is far more defensive and the Gladiator is probably more defensive as well, but it's the most well-rounded one, so it is a good combination of defense, damage and clear speed. Most importantly though, it's super fun and it's very, very chill. You don't have to do much, you just sort of run around to avoid damage, and every now and then you use Freezing Pulse to activate Elemental Equilibrium and curse the enemy with Conductivity. And as far as the upgrades are concerned, well, we can get +3 on the helmet, we can also get higher levels of the supports on the helmet, and then it's mostly in cluster duos, because what you want to do is actually run aura clusters as medium, so you have the large minion cluster, and then you have aura effect on the small ones, which scale Vengeful Commander for the Wrath effect, and then Precise Commander for more crit and crit multi for the Spectres. So there it is, the Slave Driver Necromancer. I would highly recommend it, it's really fun, it's super chill, and I thank you very much for watching as always guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you some other time. Bye bye.